Good evening, everyone. This is Hope Henley with Tools for Justice, and tonight I will be speaking with Dr. Cass Ingram, or Dr. K as he's known in the blogosphere. Dr. K is the founder of RonPaulVoteCount.org, and also we'll be speaking with Jim Condit Jr., the founder of Watch the Vote 2012. Tonight we'll be speaking about the Write-In Revolution project. And we'll start out by asking Jim to tell us a little bit about the background of the Write-In Revolution project and why it's so important for us to verify our votes, especially in this election.
There's two things that I think are essential. We're fighting a awareness battle in the country, and we have a national symbol in Dr. Ron Paul, who's the only internationally known liberty candidate. Not to denigrate anybody else, but you look back at the third party or the when you get to the general election, the non-major party efforts. And does anybody, if we had 1,000 people on here, I'd be interested. Does anybody know who the Constitution Party candidate was in 2004, or who the Libertarian Party candidate was in 1996? The answer is probably no, and that's because of the censorship that the big media does against anybody who's not a major candidate. So what we have with Dr. Ron Paul is, for once, an internationally known liberty candidate, and that's why while the writeinrevolution.com is accepting affidavits from other liberty candidates, they've been kind of settled on pushing Dr. Ron Paul for this write-in effort because everybody knows what a vote for Dr. Ron Paul means. Now, the reason that we're going for affidavits is not because we like to do affidavits or we think it's fun to go down to the bank and ask them, would you notarize my affidavit that I voted for Dr. Ron Paul as a write-in candidate. The reason is because we're pushed to this. It's a desperation measure because the powers that be have conquered the country. The United States is not conquered militarily, but we are conquered by computer vote scam. We will never, ever, ever get out of where they're taking us on this whole endless wars, encroaching police state, and permanent artificially created depression. That's what we're in, and that's what we're going to be in for the next 1,000 years if we don't do something to reverse our nation being conquered by secret computer vote count. What that means is and most Americans don't believe this. They're not aware of it. Okay, you call your local board of elections, unless you live in that little 20% of New Hampshire. You call your local supervisor elections, board of elections, and say, what's the provision for me and other citizens to see our ballots on election night, so we can just double check the computer to make sure it wasn't programmed wrong by accident or on purpose. You're going to find that there's no provision, and if you bring it up 2 or 3 times in the same conversation, they'll tell you that you actually, you'll be arrested if you try to see any ballots. Now that's how slaves are treated. That's how the communist countries and Stalin treated their people. So the point is, this is where we are now. Most people absolutely do not believe that. No matter how many times they hear it, they still don't believe it. But that's why we're doing the affidavit, is to protest 2 things. And that is, one, we're protesting that our votes are being counted in secret. And by voting for Dr. Ron Paul, we're also protesting that because of this, we get 2 phony choices every 4 years that have the same agenda. McCain and Obama, Romney and Obama, Bush and Gore, Kerry and Gore. We get the same agenda every 4 years. So we're protesting, even if there was no vote fraud, we would be sensible to vote for Dr. Ron Paul, backed by an affidavit, to protest this war, police state, depression agenda. Now, one last thing on this answer, and that is that some states will count our write-in votes, okay, and even if nobody declares, the candidate doesn't declare. Some will not. I guess the majority will not, and there's I guess a few in the middle that will if the candidate declares. I should say, take that back. Most will count the write-in votes if the candidate declares. There's a few that won't say they won't even count it, even if the candidate declares, which has got to be unconstitutional from 4 or 5 different ways. But the role that the organization plays, writeinrevolution.com, is that let's say we would get 2 million write-in affidavits, which, as I understand, Facebook is still possible, even though we only have about a month to go. They would make it public. They would make it public now and in the future that 2 million Americans did this to protest these conditions, and that would start to wake up Americans on the internet. And then there's certain ways we can wake them up off the internet as well. So the organization, writeinrevolution.com, cannot force the counties or the states to count the votes, even if they by law have to count them right now. But we can make a record of how many citizens protested the drift of our nation and the conditions we're under with a secret count by making known to the world the amount of people that took the trouble to vote for Dr. Ron Paul or another Liberty candidate backed by an affidavit.
I have a question. If a candidate doesn't register in a state by the deadline, does the write-in vote still count?
That is a good question. I hope I can answer real quick, though.
Okay.
I don't know if everybody heard about this, but I start off the video I just got done on this subject with this, and that is that some grassroots people in Maine put Ron Paul on the ballot up there. There's a provision whereby in Maine, where the grassroots can put the candidate on the ballot for president as a write-in, even if the candidate doesn't sign any papers.
Yes, and
now,
also there is an effort underway to do the same thing in California and hopefully in Missouri as well.
Good. Now, in Ohio, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to write in Ron Paul, and they're not going to count it because they say the candidate has to register to count it, which I think is an unconstitutional thing. But I'm going to still do it and send it in to writeinrevolution.com because I'm not going to vote for an enemy of my country, Romney or Obama. Yes. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I'm also going to vote for him in Florida, even though he officially won't be counted.
So, I mean, I
have to go to my grave knowing that I voted for Ron Paul.
Right, and I don't, I don't want to offend people. I mean, we only got a few minutes on the phone, and I sometimes maybe talk in a way that's a little shorthand and might offend people, but I can't think of any more thorough way to waste my vote than to vote for somebody that believes the exact opposite as I do in just about everything. And that's Romney and Obama. And so I'm going to vote for somebody I believe in, even though the system has truncated us out of it. And so I wish, I put on this video a goal of 2 million Americans, which is, again, with Facebook and email and conference, I understand is still possible.
Yes.
So even in a state where they say you can't, there's some states they say we do not provide you with a piece of paper for a write-in. If I was in a state like that, I would get an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. I would write into the Board of Elections, since you are preventing me from voting my conscience, I'm voting for Dr. Ron Paul for president, and here it is, you can throw it out. And then I'd mail that into the writeinrevolution.com and back it with my affidavit. So that's my answer. I mean, we've got to get in our mind how, and I hate to put it this way, but it's true, how conquered of a nation we are, because this computer vote fraud crime syndicate, and a lot of it popped into the open. Ron Paul supporters saw it over the country in different ways. But they're counting our votes in secret. We have no idea what the real count is. That should make every American who loves liberty, their blood should boil. Dr. K said on the last call, how can anybody vote on the system if they realize that it's counted in secret and we have no idea what the real results are, and we're not allowed to see our ballots on election day, and really it's for 21 days thereafter. And I always say to people, if I'm trying to steal the city, the state, the country, or the world, 21 days is plenty of time for me to alter the ballots to make the computer count that they announce on election night come true.
And the other thing that I keep responding back with when people say, well, why are you going to write in Ron Paul when they're not even going to count the vote? And then my question back to them is, well, how do you know your vote is being counted if they're using a computer tabulator to tabulate the votes? And my answer to them is that if they don't verify their vote with this type of system, all they're doing essentially is donating digital currency, like any money currency, to the powers that be, and they will then manipulate the vote however they see fit, and they'll credit it to the pre-selected candidate that they want to win.
Boy, that's very well said. Very well said. That's really well said and exactly right.
So anyway, the other thing that I basically have about 10 questions here. So Anyway, we have
Okay.
about maybe a half an hour left, so we'll try to
All
go
right.
through these
I'll be
quickly.
brief.
Okay, what is a write-in vote, and why is it necessary to back up a write-in vote with an affidavit?
Well, the reason is because a lot of the states have what I think are clearly unconstitutional laws, so-called, that they're not going to count your vote unless it's a candidate that jumps through hoops that are unconstitutional. A lot of candidates have been drafted. They haven't volunteered, but they've been drafted to run for something, or they've been elected. And what if we found out on Sunday night before the election that the two major party candidates were involved in some horrendous child abuse ring or something? You mean then we're still stuck with voting for it? No, people should be able to write in somebody that then they couldn't feel would lead the country. So the reason is, one, a lot of them aren't going to count it, but even in the states where they say they're going to count it, there's plenty of history, especially on absentee ballots or mail-in ballots, of people being arrested for altering them in the Board of Elections. There was somebody put in jail in the late 90s in Las Vegas, of all places, for doing that. So by doing the affidavit under the conditions we're in, then we would at least know how many people protested the system and protested the agenda by voting for Ron Paul. So, the way the things should be counted, the way votes should be counted is, and this is how far we are from it, everyone should go to their precinct and vote, and ballots should never leave public sight. They're dumped out at 7:30 or whatever at the p.m., and then the votes are counted right in front of everybody, and that's the way it is. And absentees have never been handled right in this country. We should take voting seriously. There should be a glass coffin the size box built that absentees all mail it into that, and 30 days before the election there's a National Guard or somebody, and whoever wants to be there making sure nobody looks at any of the ballots. Then you open that glass casing that's been watched for 30 days on election night, and you count those right in the open too. Right, absentees and mail-ins have never been handled right. So there's so many things that need to be fixed if we really want to have an honest vote count. But that's why we have to use an affidavit at this point to show. This is the first time I've been able to show in it with others that we don't accept this, and we don't accept the two false alternatives that they give us. And from the media rigging at the beginning to the electronic rigging at the end and all the caucus rigging in between we've seen this year, we would take a whole show just to talk about the different types of vote rigging or vote warping that's been done in this election cycle.
So basically, what you're saying, and this is something that I also try to get across to people, it's not just about Ron Paul. Everyone who is on this call probably, I'm guessing, is a Ron Paul supporter. If not, um, we Ron Paul supporters firmly believe that Ron Paul was completely cheated out of the Republican nomination. He probably has 2 or 3 times as much support as was reported by the official vote results. But even still, this is about raising public awareness that the electronic voting machines are rigged. We've seen mountains of evidence of statistical analysis that shows vote flipping and vote plucking. And then you look at all of the violations against the delegates. We could spend hours and hours and hours and probably write a library full of books on all of the election fraud. But anyway, it is raising the public awareness of election fraud, but it's also getting people to understand how a legitimate election should be run fairly, honestly, and openly, which is
Right.
nothing like what we have now. So, and that is one of the long-term plans of the Write-In Project.
Yes.
But before we get off that subject, while we're here on the website, I just want everyone to see, if you haven't been to our website yet, this is the website, writeinrevolution.com, for those people who can see the computer screen. If you're ready to get your affidavit, you click on this button here and it will download a 4-page document. First, you go and get an absentee ballot. In some cases, you just need to go pick them up at your post office. In other cases, you may have to call your supervisor of electors and have them
mail you an absentee ballot that has all of your name and contact information on it. In either case, before you send in your absentee ballot, you will want to make a couple copies of it. And one of the copies you can just upload to our website. But before you do, you will print out a copy of the affidavit, get the affidavit notarized. The affidavit basically states that you voted either by absentee ballot, and there are other methods of voting too, like early voting or maybe at the polls. After you voted, and you'll keep a copy of your supporting documents with you, you will take your affidavit to a notary, have it notarized. And once you've done that, you can submit your copy of your ballot and your affidavit right here at this button. And it just needs to be in a graphic file, or you can also fax us or mail a copy of your ballot and your affidavit that's been notarized. So I hope I said that correctly.
You did, and it is more trouble. I've just always gone to my polling place and voted here in White Oak. It's a senior center.
Uh-huh.
But now this year I'm going to get my absentee ballot in a few days. I'm going to vote, and mark the thing and write in Ron Paul, and I'm back in Ron Paul with an affidavit. I'm sending my original ballot into the Board of Elections here in Cincinnati, Hamilton County. I'm sending a copy of my ballot and my affidavit taken off of this site, writeinrevolution.com, into headquarters. I'm kind of not computer stupid in a way when it comes to the certain things, so I could scan it, hope, and upload it, but I think I'm probably just going to mail it in. But so yeah, that's what a few million Americans, or 20 million. But even if we only get 5 or 10,000 this time, Hope, that does this, that's progress. That is a start. We got to get out of the secret count. I have friends who, if you read their email, they've known this for 10 or 15 years. Okay, they read votefraud.org or whatever, and they black box voting. And you'd think in some of their emails they're going nuts because they are so frustrated with people not understanding that all the screaming, all the signs, all the donations, all the door-to-door doesn't mean a thing if at the last minute, like happened in Harry Reid's race out in Nevada in 2010, he's losing. At the last minute, they can say the computers broke down, and an hour later, Sharon Engel, who is an attractive candidate, and I think she was in her late 40s, but she's an attractive lady. Harry Reid looks like the human walking skull or whatever, and he gets elected after the computer breaks down for an hour. He was losing like 51 to 48. He's winning 51 to 48 when it comes back up. So if they can do that at the last minute, then nothing else matters. And people say, well, you don't have any proof. You don't have any proof that they did that. That's the whole diabolicalness of this whole system from a liberty point of view. That's right. That's why the Supreme Court has ruled twice. You're not allowed to have secret counts. That is violating our right to vote. Or the Supreme Court said twice in 1964 and 1915. Our right to vote consists of the right to cast a ballot, which we are still doing, and the right to know that was counted accurately. That's why secret counts are forbidden, precisely for this reason, because then the people that are already in power can do whatever they want. And the whole idea of an election is that you sometimes want to throw the people in power out of power.
Yes. Jim, I'm listening to you, but I'm also looking at a couple of questions on the screen. And Ty the Man has a question, but before I answer, I just want to point out the disclaimer that we have on the bottom of every page. It says, while we recommend that you vote your conscience by casting your vote for your Liberty candidate of choice in the 2012 general election and testify how you voted with this affidavit, writeinrevolution.com is not an agent of any state election authority and cannot guarantee your vote will be tabulated by an election official in your state. We are not affiliated with any current lawsuits. His question has to do with, I'll just read it. He says, his first question is, who is going to present these affidavits to each state's election board so that the write-in votes for Ron Paul will be counted? Well, that is up to the individual. Again, we're not claiming that we are actually going to take the place of the state's election boards. We're simply creating a way to fact check against the official reports. And we find that in most cases, it's the quote unquote minor candidates. and the absentee ballots that are usually those that are targeted for vote flipping or vote rigging, or in just some cases they're just completely ignored. So again, it would be the individual voting in the state to vote just like they normally would. And, they will, of course, they'll have to hope that their election officials will do the job that they're being paid to do. But we'll have a way to fact check. And other than this project, I don't know of any way that we can actually enforce the verification of a hand counted vote, other than raising awareness and getting people to revolt against the system. And then he's also asking who has the authority to force the states to accept a write-in vote if they don't have to, or even report on them. Well, this is more of a long-term goal. It probably won't happen by November 6th, but we're working on it for future elections, and this is the time is ripe for us to do this because there's so many disgruntled Ron Paul supporters and voters, so many people that are saying that they will not sell out and vote for any other person. It's Ron Paul or not at all. But even with that said, we know that there are people on the call that are supporters of Gary Johnson. He's the Libertarian candidate, and in fact, I've told this person on Facebook, and I'll say it again: if you truly believe that another candidate is the best person on the ballot, and you would rather vote for someone on the ballot rather than writing someone in, we'd still suggest that you vote with a paper ballot, and an absentee ballot usually is a paper ballot. You may not be provided a paper ballot otherwise.
Okay.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I hope.
Oh, good.
Sorry, can you hear me? I got Dr. K on a three-way here, so
Oh,
if you
fantastic.
can hear him, he can now start to talk.
Well, just let me just finish that answer.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So you just vote for your choice. Vote your conscience, whether it's Ron Paul or Gary Johnson or Virgil Good. Hopefully, he's a Liberty candidate, and use the same process to verify your vote. We will also be compiling our own results as a parallel vote count to fact check against the official results. I hope that answered your question, Ty. Jim or Dr. K, did you want to add anything to what I said?
Yes. Keep in mind, everyone, that it's very difficult to prove the rigging after the fact. So when you have a rigged vote, if you've got some evidence in advance, because you're collecting the absentee ballots and you're collecting the affidavits, you have this double check system for the Liberty candidates from here going forward. Then it's a lot easier to say, well, we've got 15 votes, but they're only showing 10 on the computer screen. Let's double and triple check our people. We've got their phone numbers, we've got their emails. Let's make sure that those extra 5 people that didn't do absentees really did go in and vote at that precinct. We're really behind the 8 ball to try to. I'll give you an example. We know for sure that something's wrong in Lake County, Illinois. I contacted the Board of Elections, and she said, you just don't understand how elections work. I said, there's something really wrong here. You're showing more votes for Ron Paul's delegates across the board in all the different counties than you are candidate votes. So if there were 500 people voting for a delegate, you only show 300 voting for Paul. Something's wrong. Well, they're not going to do anything about it except go into cover-up mode. So we've got to do something for, we've run this revolution this far, and we cannot give up because of the corrupt media suppressing us, cheating us out of states and caucus votes. So we've got to do something. This is a revolution. It's not about going to the county and verifying the vote with them. We're going to verify the vote independently, and then we don't care about the county. We'll go to the vote of public opinion. We'll go to the media and say, these people are insane. We've got 50 write-in votes for Paul in this Iowa precinct. They're showing 2. That's how we get this thing changed.
Yeah, and there was those cases up in New Hampshire in 2008, and there may be more this time, where even in the hand-counted places, the hand-counted part of New Hampshire, they said no votes for Ron Paul, and then a family of 6 came forth, I think, somewhere, and 2 people said, no, wait a minute, we voted for Ron Paul. Oh, okay, then they changed it to 6 votes for Ron Paul. Well, who knows how many other people didn't come forth, because most people are psychologically prepared to just go on with their lives after Election Day. They don't look back and check things. And then this other thing that Dr. K just mentioned here, this means that people went into the booth according to the official results, skipped their presidential candidate, the guy they see on TV and the guy they're devoted to, Ron Paul. They skipped him and they went to these delegates at the end of the ballot. They don't even know who they are, and more people voted for Ron Paul's delegates than voted for him. I consider that a smoking gun. Now, the other side says, well, it's not absolute proof. Well, then count the votes in the open, okay? But I consider that a smoking gun. It's just not reasonable that people would go in and not vote for Romney or Santorum or Bachman or Paul, their candidate, and yet, they would go on to the end and vote for the delegates. When a lot of people don't even know that there are delegates on the ballot, later down the ballot.
Right. It's always the case that somebody just goes in and votes for a presidential and doesn't bother with much else.
Right.
It's never the case that they go in and say, well, I like this delegate because he's my neighbor, and that there's that across the board in Illinois, people are voting for their neighbors.
Yeah.
And they're not voting for Ron Paul.
And it's how few people know even who the delegates are. They don't recognize.
They don't know who they are. They don't even know what a delegate is.
Exactly.
And now we want to just let you know that in 2008, because the county clerk who's being sued by a voter for indiscretions in any case of another matter, the county clerk said, "Oh no, this is." You'll see in previous elections that this occurs. So we went back to 2008. And we found the anomaly again, but in this case for McCain. In this case, McCain had plenty of votes. He had more votes than his delegate votes, just like Romney did. But Ron Paul, again in 2008, had less presidential votes than delegate votes. In other words, his delegate counts were higher in 2008 as well.
And think of what they did to the main delegates, what they did in about 15 different caucuses, what we found in Iowa in 1996 when they were doing it in the open, and we checked one county out of 99 and found they had stolen 13% in one county, 13% of Buchanan's votes. If they're doing this in the open, the few times we can watch it, what do you think is happening behind the scenes? And with regard to these Board of Elections people, I find the ladies or the guys that are there are very helpful when it comes to showing you how to vote absentee and all that. But the county board of election supervisor, okay, and the board of election officials, they are taken to plush meetings in each state, like we might have one in Columbus here in Ohio. All 88 county board of election teams are taken in, and these vendors or people that are from the government working with vendors tell them how to handle people like us. I mean, the crooks that are trying to run this country, we got to evict them. It's still our country. But they have thought this out, and they tell them how to handle people like us.
They do.
And one of the ways is they start to treat you like you're crazy.
Yeah.
They're counting the votes in secret, and we're the crazy ones for wanting in the open.
Exactly. So this is not difficult. This is to continue the revolution, to let the fires continue to burn, and the objective is to get the thing into motion here, rallying around Ron Paul, and then after that, and hopefully a few other Liberty candidates will get wind of this and will go. It's not too late for them to go and walk their precinct and solicit the absentee vote and then guide the people to us so that we can do a double check on a few of these Liberty candidates this year.
Yes.
Then from, just so you know, you need to participate. You need to take the time to do this, to do the absentee, to do the affidavit, because it's a long-term deal.
Right, right.
This is like Mr. Condit said about getting the crooks completely exculpated, get rid of them, and move from, you know, and we've fought too hard and too incredibly intensely to not win this. We're in this to win it. That's what this is about.
And also, we still are free to do it. In the with all the manipulation that we're fighting, I still have said on some of these calls, our main problem is not David Rockefeller and Henry Kissinger up in the Waldorf Astoria, you know, plotting how they're going to move to their next thing to move the country towards their vision of a world government or something. Our main problem is the tens of millions of Americans who are going to watch numerous reruns of Friends and Leave It to Beaver between now and the election, and won't do this simple thing because they don't realize their freedom's at stake if we don't turn this around.
That's right. That's right. We are our own enemy here.
That's right. Another question regarding compiling the evidence for election fraud, and he's wondering when we're actually going to do that. There's another lawsuit that's being filed right now to repeal the ballot restriction laws in the 39 states that either have deadlines or they have sore loser laws that make it very difficult for write-in candidates to run in those states. And my answer to him, the short answer was, it depends on how much evidence we can compile both through this project and then also coupled with the statistical analysis that Francois Choquette has put together.
Here's the deal on that. We have to have categorical proof from the voters that the count is wrong. So the answer to that question is we can do it. We need just simply teams. I've offered the phone banks of North American Urban Spice. I've got the approval to do that. If we could get a group together to consistently, yes, this effort is more important in many ways because we get the information now. We get it real time. But we have good enough proof in certain counties that they cheated on the electronic machines. The only way we can get the kind of evidence that you're looking for is to actually contact the voters in 3 or 4 suspicious precincts. And we see a trend by telemarketing, by robocalling or whatever. We see a trend where it looks like there are 50 voters for Ron Paul, not 10. And then we prove that by video camera. That's the kind of thing that's that court of public opinion that would be so powerful. Oh, you mean in the electronic machine, all of you here in this group, all of you swear and testify that you voted for Ron Paul? Yes, we did. My whole family did. And here they are right now. Here's Susie, Sally, John. Did you vote for Ron Paul? I did. It was October the 2nd. We all cast our vote. And we're as shocked as you are. It only shows 6 votes, but yet there's 10 of us right here. Or whatever. It could be done, but it's going to take teams, 10, 20, 30, 40 people working overtime to get the evidence. I can tell you where the suspicious counties are, but we'd have to really work at it to get this done before November.
Yeah, and that also reminds me of the other question that it's a great. I'm really glad you said that. We really, because we're a grassroots organization, it would be, I'll just say, it's probably an understatement to say, it would definitely be a challenge to try to do a parallel vote count for the entire country. But we are focusing on some key states that are Ron Paul friendly, Iowa and Maine being our 2 primary states that even if you don't live in those 2 states, you can still help us get the word out, either by promoting through Facebook, or if you have friends that live in some of those states, you can try to contact them. Just try to get the word out. Try to make everyone aware of the project. Please give them this website so they know what to do. And again, even if they're voting for another Liberty candidate, we still want them to use this process because, again, really the issue is election fraud more so than Ron Paul becoming president at this point in time. Even though,
and it
go ahead.
Yeah, and it's also to show that Americans are not only, again, even if there was no election fraud, we're tired of the media and the whole deal
Yes.
of them giving us two false alternatives. But with this vote, we can do both. And even if the headquarters at rightinrevolution.com, if all they did was compile how many affidavits they got, which that could surely be done, whether it's 10,000 or 2 million, whatever, then it's the seed to take back this country, because there is a long-term plan. We can't get into it in this call, but it has to do with precinct. It has to do with a few other things. And there's a plan for the next 4 years to peacefully and constitutionally take back the country. But if we're gonna do that, when someone runs in a precinct, they are going to probably have to use this affidavit process in their precinct, where the votes are usually 23 to 18 or 60 to 5 or whatever, and they'll use this affidavit thing to prove they're wrong, to prove that they were elected. And I would urge they explain to their neighbors why they're asking them to use an affidavit.
Yes.
Because we're on the verge of losing our freedoms, and there's enough people hurting. Everybody's still eating, but I mean, there's enough people hurting that people are wondering what in the heck is going on.
Well, can you imagine if we would have had this in place? But it's hardship that brings on production. If we would have had this in place in Iowa and Maine, if Matt McDonald's 15 or whatever 8 or 10 Ron Paul voters would have had their affidavits, when they said no, there's only 2 votes for Ron Paul McDonald, that's what we show, and he said, I've got whatever it was, 10 registered Republicans who are going to dispute your numbers for Ron Paul right now. And they backed off and admitted that, okay, then we'll take your numbers. Now, I don't know if they ever registered them, but that was ballot removal by the GOP, by Charlie Webster, Crookster. In Iowa, they did the same thing. They ballot stuffed and ballot removed. That's definitive. Now, only a fool, and I'm sure Mr. Condit would back this up, would think that in secret voting, that they didn't do the same in the electronic machinery.
Or a lot worse. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So to answer that question yet another time, if brave revolutionaries want to try to prove the rigging before, even Francois Choquette has said that we need this kind of proof, before November the 6th, I'll work with you. I just need your name, your email, your phone number, and Will County, Illinois, as well as Lake County, Illinois, are ripe for Cook County as well, for precinct walking and precinct calling. Even if we pick 3 really suspicious precincts. Yeah.
Did you mean to say Crook County?
I hope I didn't have a faux pas there.
Well, we'll have to listen on the recording and hear what you said. It sounded like Crook County to me.
The worst, that's okay. The worst cheating in the country was on electronic machinery was in Illinois, as far as the charting, the statistical charting that's been done.
Yes. And actually, that kind of leads back to the National Delegates lawsuit that was organized through Tools for Justice. And, people come back and say, well, what are you doing with that evidence? And my answer to them is that I really believe that in order for an election fraud suit to really have teeth, it's really going to need to be a RICO suit, which is a special type of lawsuit that will allow us to actually name a misbehaving judge to the defendants list if he or she pulls any shenanigans like we've seen in so many cases.
And I want to reiterate that the affidavit is known as sort of a res judicata. It speaks for itself. We saw that with Watch the Vote hunting down Edward True, but here's the issue. If you have videographic evidence or signed affidavits from voters, even if it's one more than the electronic machinery showed for a precinct, then you can bring the system down. We saw that with Edward True.
Yes.
That's the kind of stuff that would be juicy before November the 6th, I can tell you.
That's right. And that's actually one of the beauties of the affidavit or the absentee ballot, because we actually can vote ahead of November 6th, and we can start compiling the results before then. Anyway, it's a lot easier than trying to run around and do exit polling on the day of the election, which is what we've attempted to do in the past. And we have found discrepancies by doing by utilizing.
Well, let me give you an example. I was wondering, why isn't anybody double checking the votes so that we can use it as leverage? And there really wasn't anything happening in the Ron Paul realm, and we can explain that. Mr. Condit can tell you about the infiltration of the campaign. But so I said, I'm not going to be around in Illinois, but Wisconsin's voting on April, whatever it was, or whatever it was. So I went to Wisconsin, and we campaigned around a couple colleges. Then after that, the next day was the vote. So I got there at 7:30 and stayed there till 5. And I video cammed the whole thing. I set up a tripod and video cammed it. And Ron Paul won. There were two reasonably sized, I think about 110 voters each, or 100 voters each, so 200 voters. Ron Paul won second and then first between the two precincts, and the total was Ron Paul won over Romney, then Santorum, or it may have been Santorum second. A lot of the Democrats told me, come here, off camera, I'm just throwing a stupid vote. I'm throwing a stupid vote for Santorum, who has no chance in the world to win, just to put a spike in the Republicans' eyes. So even with all that silly voting of the communist Democrats, Ron Paul won. This is Milwaukee. Everybody listening? Milwaukee City. Now, when you look at the official results from the central tabulator 3 or 4 days later, how many other big precincts do you think Ron Paul won in Milwaukee? Anybody want to guess?
None.
That's exactly the answer.
I would have guessed that no matter where it was in the country. Hey, and Dr. K, everybody remember this? Remember when in Nevada they said we're going to have a late caucus because of the Seventh-day Adventists and the Jewish people that can't vote till sundown. So they had this late thing on Saturday night. Wolf Blitzer was there from CNN covering it. And I guess they thought, we'll cover this late, and it'll be whatever. And Ron Paul won by a super landslide.
Yeah.
And they were on camera. There's nothing they could do about it.
No.
And this is when. So, I mean, this is, again, like Hope said, this is bigger than Ron Paul. Ron Paul says it's bigger than Ron Paul. This is a matter of whenever we got, throw in one off-the-wall a story here, but I could go on for hours with this kind of thing. Parade Magazine, I believe it was, I can track it down for sure, my memory may not serve me correctly, they're carrying an article where somebody up in the hills of Colorado woke up on the Sunday night before election, and I believe it was 1998, and he was stunned to see Dan Rather on his satellite TV talking as if it was election night and going through the whole thing and blah, 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 blah. And he called CBS. He said, did I sleep for 2 days? That was his first reaction. Is this Tuesday night? And he had intercepted the winds or whatever. He got a satellite broadcast of CBS and the other networks totally practicing election night on Sunday night.
Isn't that something? And
they said, you have interrupted. He got a call from some authority that you've illegally interrupted a military broadcast. He said, I didn't illegally do anything. I just found it on my satellite TV when I got up from a nap. So this is, imagine that though, practicing on what election night's going to be like.
These guys are bad.
Yes.
State by state.
Well, a lot of the TV commentators will say, with 1% of the vote being reported, they will declare the winners.
Yeah.
That's totally absurd.
Yeah, there's a book called The Vote Scam, The Stealing of America. Vote Scam, The Stealing of America by the late brothers James and Kenneth Collier, who, by the way, were kind of left-wingers. They ended up more centrist as they died, but they go into this whole exit poll hoax, and that's another, again, I'm not going to go into it because that's an hour show in itself, but I will promise you the exit polls are total hoaxes. I mean, they take a few of them.
Don't even do them.
They take a few of them. But the idea that they take enough to be able to project, which they used to do in the 80s and 90s, a few minutes into that all is to prepare you from the phony polls from last year, the exit polls on election day are all to prepare you for the computer count that's been predetermined in the key races.
Yeah, and just to show you the power of the affidavit, when Milwaukee, back to Milwaukee now, when we went to the County Board of Elections and said there's something wrong, why would us amateur exit pollers be the only ones that have even a medium-sized precinct? There aren't even any of those that Ron Paul won in the whole city, and there's like hundreds of these precincts. And I handed her an affidavit saying that we want this to be looked into, signed, and I said, you're served with my affidavit, and I included some charts and documents. She said, I'm not accepting that service at all. I said, well, I'm serving you anyway. This was the county clerk. And so we recorded it, and then I left. I hired a process server, inexpensive, $40, and we served her by process server to back it up. When that happened, she tore down the results, the computerized results, removed them from the website for the city of Milwaukee, and has never posted them again. So this is, I told her there's something wrong with the central tabulator. Now, why would she tear the results down if there wasn't a discrepancy that she herself, is there any sound reason that she'd take the results down?
No.
Okay, so Barbara, I think you're one of the Hope Henleys that has been wanting to ask a question. Are you still there?
Okay. I'm asking, would it be possible for a person who wants to vote establishment to send in an affidavit stating that even though they did vote establishment, they really didn't want to, but they want to submit an affidavit as a protest count? Does that make sense? Because they want to make sure that, I mean, I know that seems like an oxymoron, but...
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Dr. K is handling the actual physical and uploaded ballots, but it does make sense as long as the affidavit was sent with that understanding, even though I would beg people that you're wasting your vote to vote for either of the major candidates, but if you believe in the Ron Paul agenda anyway. But, yeah, but I mean, in other words, if people just understood that, and they were protesting the secret count, that is something. At some point they're going to realize that those who are imposing a secret count on them, the candidates they're backing cannot be trusted. But Dr. K, what is you're the one collecting.
I guess we should be liberal about it. At first, when I heard that question, I thought I didn't know how much the system can handle, but change.org can handle a lot. I guess we can too. I suppose somebody that, if they're that conscientious that they want to produce an affidavit, we'll accept it. But again, like Mr. Condit said, if you know somebody that's that adamant, we should be encouraging them not to waste their vote, but to ask for redress through writing in Ron Paul. They're not going to win. They're not going to win Obama or win Romney. That's already predetermined.
Yeah, their vote means nothing on that day. They'll pick whoever they want. But if we get, let's say, between 10,000 and 2 million votes with the write-in for Ron Paul, we'll keep that alive for years and decades if we need to, just like we've kept the cheating of Pat Buchanan alive since 1996. And the Des Moines Register finally admitted on the day they changed the winner in this year's Iowa caucus that a number of prominent people thought that Buchanan, not Dole, had won that caucus. First time any major established. So, and we're also keeping alive the Edward True story from here on in. How one guy. So we will keep this alive. The people that vote for Santorum and Romney and Obama this time, their vote will be completely forgotten on November 7th. The bad boys will have their man in, their agenda, and believe me, your vote will never be mentioned again if you vote for either of those two establishment puppets.
Well, if I could make a point about why I asked that question.
Sure.
There's a YouTube clip, several of them, and I was down in Tampa, and I actually met this guy. He's from Texas, and he was interviewed by one of the commentators, and he just said, the man asked, who are you going to vote for, or who are you supporting? And he said, well, I'm going to vote for Mitt Romney, but I support Ron Paul. And then you see other clips where this same man is yelling in protest, point of order, point of order. And you see him all around supporting Ron Paul, yet he stated he's going to vote for Mitt Romney. So how many people would ever see that? That's why I posed that question about the affidavit.
Well, we would like to know who they are anyway, because perhaps they're some of the well-to-do people and others who feel anybody but Obama, and they've got that burning in their skull so much that we can't tweak them by November the 6th. So yes, we will accept those affidavits where they explain that they're protesting and that they despise the two-party system and the lack of choice, and we'll tally those too.
Great. We have another question from Papa Bear in Maine, and even though I would encourage him to, he says that the vote is verified in Maine, and I wanted to ask him specifically what he meant by that. So I'm going to.
Yeah, I would be interested in that.
Let's see. Where did you go? Oh, there he is. Okay.
Are they able to talk, or do they just have to do it
in
writing?
Barry, can you hear us?
I certainly can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, you can hear me.
Yeah.
It was verified on the Daily Poll that Maine is officially a write-in state for Ron Paul. We have our 4 electors, and we were instructed to put in the name of Mark Willis as vice president because he is the national committee man. So it's been all pretty much squared away right here in Maine.
This is the biggest news of the year. This is wonderful, especially with the write-in campaign being established.
Yeah.
Well,
so
you know how we are in Maine, right?
So,
well,
Papa Bear,
I marched with your Mainers in Tampa. I know how you guys are.
So, I misunderstood your question. Yes, Ron Paul is confirmed and verified as an official write-in candidate for the state of Maine. However, that doesn't mean that your votes are going to be verified. So you can still use our process. Again, go to the website, download your affidavit with this, click on this button here. There's 2 pages of background, 1 page of instructions, and your affidavit. Print out the affidavit, and before you send in your absentee ballot, make a copy of it, and then get your affidavit notarized and submit them both back to us. And you're still going to be sending your absentee ballot.
Well, hold on. The caller said that you do paper ballots up there?
We certainly do.
But paper ballots is only half of the battle. In other words,
exactly.
when you okay, you know that already. So we do paper ballots in Ohio. I'd say 99% of the country does paper ballots. Some don't. They have the electronic thing like you with no paper trail. But that's the problem is in Ohio, for instance, we then have to feed our vote into an ATM safe type of a thing.
Yeah.
And then the final slap in the face is a electronic picture comes up with a flag saying your vote has been counted. But see, when they take those ballots away from the people before they're counted, once they leave the public site, the chain of it's talking courtroom language, the chain of evidence is broken, and we don't have a valid election anymore.
As you know, Matt McDonald told the GOP, we're thumbing our nose at your secret tabulation. Even though we've got paper ballots, you've asked us not to count them in public. So he took a forum, and the people in his precinct, as you know, said, yay, 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 we want it to be public. So So he had all these eyewitnesses that there were 10 Ron Paul votes, not 2. The GOP was going to award only 2. So yeah, they had paper ballots, but they cheated on them anyway.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. So it's the two now. In for instance, in part of New Hampshire, and it's down to 20% now. They do it right. My friend Doug Bursall, who I've met in the last 10 years, he was one of the election judges in Richmond, New Hampshire. By the way, Ron Paul won Richmond, New Hampshire, and they did it right. This was 2008. And so they have the paper ballots there. They have a ballot box they've had since 1860 or something. That ballot box stays in the public site all day. Anybody can sit there and observe all day if they want. They pour out the ballots at closing time, and they count them right there in front of all the people that want to watch, and there's 2 scrutineers. Now, that's the way it's right. If it's any interruption between the time people vote and those ballots disappear, why does a magician want to make things disappear or make you look the other way so he can do his trick?
Yeah.
And
I have another question.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Now, if I can contact some people at the voting center, I mean, at the town offices where we do it, of course, they're not going to have this same option. Now, can they take a picture of that with their ID on it and send in that with an affidavit as well?
Yes.
Or
Excellent.
instead of?
Excellent, yeah.
But
yes, they can.
include the affidavit. It's because the
exactly
affidavit,
right.
Yes.
See, what I can do is I can make copies of the affidavit, and I can have some copies with me.
Yes.
And because I want to be there on election day, I want to make sure that everybody knows that this is possible.
If you've got a notary that's a friend, if you've got a notary and you know a notary and they can be with you, that simplifies it, because the Ron Paulers can fill out the affidavit on site after they exit, and that would really be the ideal precinct at this point in time.
Hell, it's easy. I could become a notary.
You sure could.
Yes, or even if they have a photograph of, assuming they each can take their own photograph of their ballot, they can. It doesn't need to be notarized on the spot, but just
Right.
as long as they have photographic proof of how they submitted their.
Well, that was why I was saying a picture with their photo ID
Yes.
on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, it would be best if
But become a notary, sure, because make it simpler on people if you can.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's not the first time something like that is going to come in handy.
Absolutely
That's right.
not. So, by the way, Papa Bear, if you want to help us organize Maine, as I mentioned earlier, Maine is one of our key focus states.
Right.
And in fact, we have on our website the main address for the organizers, the people who actually, the electors. So we're trying to help you. So basically, help us help you.
Okay.
And hope, if I could say, Papa Bear sounds like he's extremely well informed, and I don't mean to be talking down to anybody when I say some of these things. I know a lot of you know this, but since this is being recorded, there are people who are for the first time saying, "Gee, I thought I could trust the Board of Elections," just like I said. I would have said if somebody didn't tell me. I thought I could trust that they weren't genetically modifying the food. Now everyone admits they're genetically modifying some of the food. That would never have crossed my mind in a million years if somebody hadn't alerted me to that's happening in places. And this is the same as here. We're waking people up who most people are trusting, most people are honest. They have trouble thinking the level of criminality that we're fighting.
That's true.
Yeah, I went to a website called Ron Paul 20. I think it was Ron Paul 2012, or I forget now. But I pledged my vote to Ron Paul on that website. And
good.
I'm in Maine, okay? I'm a man of integrity. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And this option for writing in Ron Paul was being taken away from me. And I'm like, wait a minute. I can't let this happen. If I can't write in Ron Paul, or if Ron Paul is not an option, I'm going to leave that space blank.
Yes. And you can even you can know that we're even asking people in the states that claim they won't count it to write it in anyway.
Or if it's a mail-in, then get an 8.5 by 11 and say, since you wouldn't provide me with a way to write in Ron Paul, I'm sending it in anyway, and then send a copy of that with your affidavit.
I've been saying that too. Now, if they don't count them as votes, they're going to get to a point where they're going to say, wait a minute, we have a lot of votes for this, but we don't have the votes for president. This would be a no confidence vote, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's almost like voting for none of the above. But we will have at Write-In Revolution headquarters, if let's say 10,000 people in Maine vote for Ron Paul with an affidavit, they may not show it, but we're going to show it, and we're going to say, what is this? What is kind of a situation? Well, they're going to show it in Maine though, because you guys got the job.
Well,
done.
I'm talking about I'm talking about other states. See, I contact people
right. Other states
all
where
over the place.
Mr. Condit was the first, and I'm backing him up. To say that, look, everybody writes in Ron Paul.
Right.
And in Nevada, it's all touchscreen. Well, then get an absentee and write his name on that.
Right. Or if worse comes to worse, get your own 8.5 by 11. Say you even write on it. We know you say you're not going to count this, but we're so fed up, we're voting for Ron Paul by this method. And then we'll have, if they send the affidavit to headquarters and Write-In Revolution, we have it. So it's a very good point you're making here. What if they, and a lot of people said for years, can we just have none of the above on every race? And then of course the establishment is petrified of that, because they know that actually I believe if we had none of the above, even with people that don't know what we're doing, none of the above would beat both Obama and Romney, I'll bet you, if people had that option.
Absolutely. But I figure if it's a write-in and they're not counting it, it would probably count as a no contest vote or a no confidence vote.
Yeah.
Well, if nothing else, it sends a monstrous message to the regime that we're on
exactly.
to them, and that this is just the beginning.
Right.
And this is what I've been telling all my friends.
You're exactly right.
Wonderful.
You're exactly on point. All we need now is about 100 million other people to realize think like you.
When I was at the Mainers, going up and down the aisle with their march, my cell phone ran out right when I was photographing a Mainer putting a clothespin on his nose.
Yeah,
mistakes. He just can't stand the stench.
Well, I don't talk like a Mainer, by the way.
I'd still like to have verification of this because it's so incredible, more verification. But this is why, because of all the caucuses, they had to cheat in the open, especially Maine, and the Iowa caucus where they had to change the winner, even though I suspect Dr. Paul won there if we could have just got enough eyewitnesses to all the 1,800 caucuses. That's why apparently they passed something at the Republican National Convention that they're never going to have a caucus again, that they're only going to have...
I'm sorry.
No, they're only going to have secret electronic votes from now on. This tells me that again, I said this, somebody objected to this language, but this is the establishment waving the white flag saying, we know we can't beat you honestly, so we got to take all the votes into secret computer counts. Now, they're not raising the white flag that they're going to concede the country to us, but when they're doing that, they realize that they're in deep trouble because the people are waking up and they lost a lot of these things that you could verify, like the caucuses.
Right. Well, I was at the state caucus. I was a delegate for my town. Mm-hmm. The first step I ever made in any direction this way, Yeah, but I've researched this since the middle of '08, and even with the research I did between June and November, Obama scared me. He really did, and I'm like, I'm a union guy. I was with the sheet metal workers union for 15 years, and it's like, well, they're telling me I got to vote for this clown, and I can't do it.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, I just wanted to, I'm looking at the clock, and I know that we had scheduled this call from
shut me off.
10 till 11:30, and I don't know if we're going to all get cut off at 11:30, so we might just have just a couple more minutes to close down the meeting. There was one other question, and Nikki's actually, I don't know if Nikki, you could ask it too, but she's saying that in some states, if someone writes in someone who's not on the official list of write-in candidates, that it could invalidate the entire ballot. And that is really difficult for me to even fathom. But I did find out in Pennsylvania that anyone who is not registered as a write-in candidate is just added to a list that goes into a general other bin. So these are problems that we're going to have to overcome, and we can do that with our project. We will be counting your votes correctly, so please make sure that you validate them by going to writeinrevolution.com and download this affidavit that you see on the screen. And the rest of the instructions are on the 4-page packet. So
yeah, and I would like to see some written proof that some state disqualifies the whole ballot because they write in somebody for president who's not on the ballot.
Yeah, this is it. And I would just do it anyway.
Yeah, because
and take them to task.
See, anybody who's worried about that doesn't understand that every key election, in most elections they don't care who gets elected, but every key election is determined anyway. People just don't believe that yet. They don't believe that their vote is not counted.
Jim, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, it's Nikki. I don't know that that's a fact. That is something that somebody out of Maine told me might be a possibility, and I just wanted to check with you guys to see if you knew that, if that was true.
Yeah, and I'm saying I don't know that it's not a fact. I just certainly like to see some written proof in the state code, the Ohio Revised Code or the Kentucky Revised Code, that this is true. Because if it is, it's another encroachment against the constitutional right of people to vote the way they want to vote.
This is a revolution that was started, I think, with the Aaron Russo. At least it was accelerated with the Aaron Russo thing, and we've won this revolution. We just got cheated out of the process. I mean, here you've got Ron Paul winning Iowa, and winning Maine, and coming in a very strong second in New Hampshire. They cheated us out of the win in Iowa, and so they cheated us out of our presidential choice. This is a very serious crime that these people have committed.
Oh, absolutely. So. Even if you think Santorum won, which I don't, Romney got the boost for 2 weeks of being, he's the front runner. Well, it turns out they had to change it because they ran to the mic and announced him as the winner without the proof. Very serious.
Yeah.
They did the same in Maine. I was watching Maine because I know the talk show host Steve Martin and others out there, and they came to the microphone and announced Romney, and basically they had to retract everything by the time they got to the convention. But all they wanted was that psychological thing to go out over the nationwide airwaves. Ron Paul has been buried. Romney is the winner. Don't worry about it. And the message to all of us is, all the people who are awake to this two-party duopoly scam we're under, is your efforts mean nothing. Give up.
Your money bombs.
Give up. Give up. That's the message. Says give up. And our message to them should be, put your hands out. We want you handcuffed and arrested for what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Right. And now the Romney people are begging the Ron Paul people to support Romney. So pathetic.
I hope that they get on their hands and knees. That's the kind of begging I like to see.
Yeah. Well, any final words that anyone would like to say? I'd kind of like to wrap this up. I need my beauty sleep.
Go ahead.
Jim, any final words, thoughts?
Well, this is part of a long-term strategy. We don't have time to cover it here, but we'll continue on after November 6th, because this is the way that we take back the country. And to someone that's maybe happened on this call or hears it and is new, they may say, well, what do you mean? But there is a plan, and there's a plan to peacefully and constitutionally take back this country. And I want everyone to be assured of that there is a plan, and we'll get into that when we have time on another call or as the weeks and months progress.
And let me just add that let's go win Maine. Let's win back Maine and win back Iowa. Let's organize some grassroots efforts to go to our relatives or friends and get them all. Let's get piles and piles of absentee ballots going.
Yes.
Let's do it heavy duty in these two states, and let's give a shot at New Hampshire. Let's win them all.
Yes, and Papa Bear, we're here to help. So you have my contact information on the About Us page, or actually it's on the Act Now info page. Anyway, either private message me or call me or email me, and let's work
And
together.
let's get on the radio with Steve Martin, Mr. Condit. Why don't you do something, and then I'll do something with him later.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, and
okay, everybody.
We know who Mark Willis is because we talked to him prior to the national delegates lawsuit. So we're well aware of him and his efforts.
I mean, I'm so impressed with the people in Maine. Their independence is what you, I don't know how the word for it. It's to be admired.
Yeah, and emulated.
Yes.
Yeah,
They're
emulated
heroic.
is correct. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, everyone.
So don't eat any of those GMO foods, and make sure you carve a chaga off the tree up there, so that you can have that extra energy you need to beat these guys up bad.
Yeah, hit them over the head with a chunk of chaga.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Good night.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Mr. Condit, for
Thank you, everybody. Yeah. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.